Butter Creations, The Spread, take one.
How's it going, guys? This is episode 1 of The Spread, put on by Butter Creations, which is Frankie and I's production company. We also have Zach and Thomas, who aren't a part of this episode. But a little backstory here. We've been doing video production collectively for a long time, all as freelancers at one time, and then kind of all joined forces. And for the past 4 years have been building a wonderful company and have had some great times in between. And we thought we'd just give you guys a little bit of a window into what it's like to run a production company. Different fun stories on set, different issues and problems that we've had to solve. If you have ever been on a set, you know that it's a constant problem-solving game. So this is just a little window into that. We don't exactly have a plan for it, aside from the fact that we just want to open up and share with you guys. And we look forward to seeing how the show goes, really. Yeah.
Dude, that was really good.
Oh, thanks, dude. Oh,
Dude,
thanks, man.
that was a killer intro.
You had mentioned before how it's crazy that we're here right now.
Very.
It's very crazy that we're here. And I remember the first time we had met before this, but the first time that you and I actually hung out one-on-one. Do you remember that day?
I do. It was, if we're talking about the same day, it was very cold.
It was a cold day. I looked at the weather. I think it was like, dude, it was like -5.
It was cold.
It was something
I think it was like -4. And I remember messaging you and being like, no way, dude.
Yeah.
And you were like, come on, like, let's just go out and do something creative. And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm in.
So I called Frankie and I was like, man, I had this awesome idea. I had, at the time, I still have it. At the time, I had a 1965 CT90. And for all you bike guys out there, extremely underpowered scooter that I call a bike because that's my bike. But a very sought after, cool vintage look, and a very sought after year. And I had this idea of like, why don't we take this bike out in the snow? I'll just like rip some donuts and Frankie can do his thing on the photography end of things. And then we can switch and I can shoot some stuff. So I called Frankie up. It's like 5 degrees outside. And I'm like, hey man, I have this awesome idea. I want to go shoot some bikes in the snow. He was reluctant. He was like, dude, it's pretty cold, man. I don't know if this is the day. But he caved in and we met up and we drove up to this point in Golden, Colorado, just outside of the Coors Light factory. And I had anticipated snow because it was freezing outside. We live in Colorado. There's typically some snow on the ground. And we show up to the spot and there's no snow at all. So the final pictures came out great, but had nothing to do with the original idea and concept. And that was really the first time we'd hung out one-on-one.
Yeah. And those photos I shot there in the office and also at my home office. And not only did you and I go out there together, I'm pretty sure
I think someone met us there.
One of our friends who invested into our company in the beginning was the one that showed up that day. And I was like, why are you here? It's so cold. Like just watching us like rip around going, how fast that thing go? Like 5?
Maybe we pushed it to like 10 miles an hour, especially in the runway we had. It was very short. So.
We made it look like we were going 90 miles an hour with like the shutter drag and stuff. And people were like, what were you guys doing? I was like, dude, honestly, if you guys were up there that day, people were watching us because they were driving up doing the overlook of like Golden, Colorado. And we were just like,
I can tell you the photos came out sick.
Yeah.
Right. But seeing that production happen probably was relatively comical.
As we talk about these good times, like what brought you here? What brought you to the production agency? How did you find yourself, now in a production house with 3 other partners, and what is that like? Where did it start? What's your inspiration? Give us a little bit of backstory there.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll back up far here, but I'll keep it concise. So I played football at the University of Coastal Carolina, and I was going to school there for marketing. And in my last semester, I started to get very interested in video. I was on a road trip somewhere and I listened to this podcast with a very, very good creator who was working in the music space. And I just hearing stories about his adventures and his problems and his successes in the film industry, specifically in the music space, was just like super intriguing to me. I was like, man, I could see myself doing that for a living. At that time, I had done internships in venture capital. I had done internships in graphic design and all different forms. And I noticed that each time that the summer was coming to an end, I was really looking forward to going back to school. And I couldn't get my head around the idea that like at one point I'll go get a job and there will be no more school. There will be no more summer. So the idea that I was looking forward to going back scared me a little bit, especially when I was coming into my final year of college. And so I looked into the price of my last semester at Coastal Carolina, and I think at the time it was like a Sony A7S II, and I think I got some Tamron or I don't know, some glass. And it was a similar price. I mean, those were expensive cameras. And I made a decision that I was going to take the camera route. So instead of paying for the last semester, I paid for the camera and just started shooting all sorts of stuff. And fast forwarding here, I did, freelance for a while. I had the whole journey in my school bus, and then I moved to Colorado, and I was really, really excited about the idea of working with a team. As an independent contractor, it's super fun, but you're kind of like, you're always on your emails, you're always trying to network, you're always trying to do these things to keep yourself relevant in that space. And I knew that if we had this like solid team and we could start building rapport and we can learn each other's weaknesses and strengths and try to balance each other out, that we would have like a real powerhouse of a team. So I knew from the beginning that I wanted to start a studio. I didn't just want to be an individual in this space. And throughout my course of an independent contractor, I kept notes of people that I met that I felt like I could really work with. And the first one is Thomas Morgan, who has been, such an asset to the company and such a fun guy to work with. And Tom has actually introduced me to you. And when all those, different pieces of the puzzle started lining up, it felt just like time. And it was a huge risk. I remember when we first put the lease down on the studio for, I think it was just a year, I was terrified. The idea that I was like, I have my rent, and then I have to figure out how to pay this rent. And we didn't have any clients at the time. We just were like, we're going to figure this out. We're going to make it work. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of what brought us here. It's just the excitement of working with fun, creative, and excited people, and just trying to create content that reflects the enjoyment that we get from making said content. And I couldn't be happier with the team that has naturally developed. We have you, of course. We have Thomas, and we have Zach. Yeah, I mean, now we're here, man, and now we're just making great stuff.
That's awesome, because I hear that story. It's cool to sit down here through this lens, because I've heard it, many other ways. Yeah. But that's cool, man. That's what a journey. Dude. I'm so glad we met. Yeah, because look what we get to do now.
It's crazy. We were shooting Colter Wall 2 days ago. One of my favorite country musicians.
That was a blast, man.
Such a great show. What's can I switch that question around on you? Like, what brought you into this space, and how did you end up here?
Man, that's a loaded question, because, my dad was filming these big blockbuster movies, and I'm just playing. Dude,
that is Steven Spielberg.
Yeah. I've been doing Hollywood stuff forever.
This is a walk in the park.
Yeah. I'm just testing this out. Honestly, I was just like a hipster kid growing up. I grew up in St. Louis playing music. All of my friends did like band stuff. I was playing music forever. And I just told this story actually on my LinkedIn the other day, just kind of like threw some vulnerability out there on, well, what is my backstory? How did I get where I am? And the journey was just, it honestly started in 2019. Backtracking to 2007, I did do some press photos. They didn't go anywhere. I was like a month career. I was like so into it in that moment. Like within a month, years went by. So fast forward to 2019, I had a friend living with me, and he was leaving a bunch of stuff in my house, and he was like, "Hey, can I leave some things here? I'll be back." And I was like, "Sure." One of those things was I think it was a T5i.
Oh yeah,
I think like the Rebel.
Yeah,
Rebel. It had a little 50 millimeter on it.
Hell yeah.
I would
the OG.
I would just take this thing out. I would take pictures of plants and like whatever was in my vicinity. Mm-hmm. And that led into music. The music part of it was just, I had a lot of friends playing. So I was like, oh, this would be fun. Live music. I'll do this. And I was just shooting a ton of free shows, and like a lot. Like I was just like, I just want to be in this.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a fun scene.
Yeah. Music played its, its path. And then I just wanted to do so much more. I was like, oh, I'm seeing like the music side, but I'm also seeing like cool commercials and like the bigger side of production. That really, really grabbed me and took me down a deep rabbit hole of just like, I still haven't looked. I'm still in that rabbit hole.
It never ends, man. No. Once you think you find out all that you don't know.
That rabbit hole is a big financial hole of obsession that like,
world's most expensive hobby. You have to turn it into a career.
Yeah, you figure it out once you're in it, because you're like, no turning back.
Yeah.
Did music and still doing music, but the music led to just I wanted to start producing more things and more direction. And like I was doing ads for a lot of Instagram businesses. I landed my first retainer after I was taking photos and videos. Somebody was really interested in bringing me on. So I did that for about a year. And going into year 2 is when I met you and Thomas. I met Thomas. I took a break for a minute because I was just so deep in it. And I was like, well, what am I trying to do here? We were coming out of COVID, which dropping that word sounds so funny now.
Wild.
I was coming out of COVID. I saw such a path for me to do this, but I didn't know how I was going to do this. So
Can I step in for a quick second
yeah,
just
totally.
to embellish on the story a bit? Frankie at that time when Thomas had first met Frankie. Now keep in mind I had been working with Thomas, on and off for the course of a couple of years now as a freelancer, and at this point we were actually working together at another studio. And Thomas comes into the office one day and he looks at me and he goes, "Man, I did the shoot with that guy Frankie last night." And he's like, "I can't tell you how it feels. It's so fun to work with an artist." And I looked right back at him. I was like, "Dude, I've been working with you for years. And I feel like I do my best to be as creative as possible and as artistic as possible." And Frankie comes in, and Thomas is like, "Man, I got to work with a real artist last night." And I took that in 2 ways. One way, I was just really pumped that we had gotten introduced to this mysterious figure with the crazy turnaround time, Frankie Ronello. And then at the same time, I felt a little bit competitive. I was like, "Man, I'm pretty creative too." Like,
Which it blows my mind that you even had that feeling about something Thomas said, because I then would see your work and I was like, wow, like I still look at your work and your editing skills and everything. And I'm always just so like it's weird how the creative mind works.
it is. Everyone's got a different path
Yeah.
to get to the destination.
You're always so hard on yourself.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
But I think
gosh.
most people in this industry are probably unnecessarily hard on yourself. And I have a battle between like, is being hard on yourself a benefit for continuing to grow, learn, and challenge yourself? Or is being hard on yourself a bit of a pullback because you don't want to release the stuff that you've made, or you get too hard on yourself about a shoot that you had high expectations for that maybe
Right.
didn't live up to it? And I think that's probably a struggle that every single creative deals with.
On that note, spoke about this in my post the other day, because I know we're kind of diverting off of like where I started,
We can finish it off.
just to wrap up. Basically, I met you guys and it was like 3 of the same people trying to do like the same path.
Yeah.
And that kind of click it doesn't happen all the time. And we grabbed a hold of it just by the horns and took off. And we're like, all right, like let's do this. And fast forward to now, we own a production house here in Denver, and we've had the opportunity to do a lot of really cool stuff, a lot of commercial work. We spent a lot of time in live music. Live music for all of us it's been in our background. So we've had the opportunity to kind of expand on that as we've grown. And now we do a lot of internal work and sales and all the fun stuff of running a company that is like that. It's that image. You always see the tip of the iceberg. It's like, you never see you only see what's up here, but you never see what's down here. And like,
I call it, we are creatives. And as a byproduct of that, we've had to become businessmen. We could always pitch these ideas. We're like, "Oh, I want to do this crazy shoot, and there's this transition that I want to use, and there's this new lens that came out." And then you have to find someone who's willing to pay for that idea. And then that process has been such a fun learning curve for us, because it is a very necessary part of the process, but it's something you never consider when you're entering this space. And I think the people that have figured that out quicker tend to have early success. And it's a really important part of it, but it's definitely not the most interesting and intriguing part of it.
That, and I try to grow from everything that we do in production, and sometimes getting things out of my personal mouth, my brain's like, you're visually like telling this story and they're getting it. And then at the end of the conversation, they're like, okay,
I don't know what
can you expand on that a little bit? I'm like, all right. And like, that's where like you've grown into like creative decks and like really visually bringing something to the table, which, we've had a lot of success in.
Yeah.
And it's been such a journey from where we started to where we are now. And like, there's such a road ahead of us.
And I think actually that's one of our biggest improvements, and something, again, I didn't consider when entering the space, is like communicating your idea to the client, or even just to people you're working on the project with, is out like 60 to 70% of the battle. I mean, getting that idea in a format that is legible and comprehensive is one of the biggest and best skills you can learn in this industry, and it's definitely one of the more difficult skills because everyone receives information differently. And so you have to take the way that you see these projects in your brain that might make so much sense, and you have to figure out a way to like translate that to paper. And there's all sorts of ways to do it, and that's a really fun puzzle to solve. But it is something that is a huge barrier for a lot of creatives that struggle with communicating that.
Totally.
One of my favorite things that when we I mean, we still do, but when we were like primarily working in the music space, I would tell people what we do. And, we shoot live coverage and concerts and recaps and all this stuff. And people would be like, oh man, you should shoot for like Justin Bieber. As if like I didn't think of that, I was like, oh man,
like
what an awesome idea. We should just go shoot for Justin Bieber. And I think it's so funny. People on the outside of the industry don't understand how difficult that it can be to get connected into the artist that you're interested in, that you want to shoot, and all the steps that come with that. And it's funny to get that advice,
Sending an email, you're like, dear Justin, love your music. I think we could benefit as a team together. Can I film for you? Hey, hope to connect.
Hey, Justin.
Yeah.
Hope all is well. Just wanted to circle back here.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let's chat about some fun times on set. You and I spoke a little bit before we started this episode, and we chatted about one of our, it was honestly at the beginning of
one of our first big projects.
As we were growing the company with the artist Griz. He's an EDM artist. He actually is on hiatus right now, which is good for him. He really blew up and then kind of just took off, which I think is great for mental health.
Same thing.
Yeah. If I was just rolling in that money, I'd be like, I'm going to take some time off.
Yeah, dude. Why not?
A little backstory is that we met with him to produce basically an entire music video for an entire album called Rainbow Brain, which, was a blast. And we got to spend how many days and nights?
I think it was 4 days. And one of the craziest parts of that project were the whole shoot itself had 4 different looks in the production. And of course you can't switch around looks day of because setting up that production takes some time. So we shot the whole thing in a non-chronological order and had no idea what we were shooting next. I mean, I think Thomas was more in charge of the creative on that project. And there was also another studio that we worked with that was very involved in that side of things.
And they had a great producer on set.
And they had a great producer on set, yeah. And it was funny because we would shoot this scene and then all the lights would just turn off and it would go completely black in there. Because that night, in between each day, we would shoot during the day, and then at night, the lighting design guys would stay there and reprogram the whole next look of the next day. So once we had wrapped our section of what we needed to shoot, it would just go completely dark, and we had, had no idea what was coming next. So we didn't even really know what that video looked like until we finally got the final product.
Speaking of it, like always being dark in this area, so where this was shot was in if I could paint a picture for you, it was in a 4,000 capacity venue that we shoot in, which we were recently in, which we'll come back to that. And they closed the stage off with curtains. So we're just in this like black hole of lasers and lights. And it was so disorienting when you would walk out of that room into light. You'd be like, oh my, you've just been underground for like a year. You'd be like, what is going on?
I remember going outside like midway through the shoot to take a break or something, and it would just be like, I felt like it was midnight or 2 a.m, and it would be like midday. It's just like the sun's out.
How long have we been here?
I don't know what's going on, man.
On that note, going deeper into more fun moments on set, I want to go back to when you and I shot a music video. This was at the beginning of the company as well.
I think this is our first solo like paid shoot together.
Yeah, we were so stoked. We were like, we were flying out together. We were picking up gear, and it was just you and I, and we were like, wow, this is a lot for 2 people.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's when I first learned, like, oh man, that's why production crews are 25 to 50 to 100 people.
We brought out all the stops for that too. We were like,
did our best.
You had just bought the red Komodo. We were so stoked to have it, and just we wanted to film on it. So we went to St. Louis, filmed a music video for our buddy Matt Jordan, who is a country artist out of St. Louis, and he's doing great things. We still keep in touch. We've done a few music videos at this point. We had some funny moments in that first music video. We hired a couple actors, which ended up being great people.
Outstanding actors who I think are both building quite a career. I think they both moved to New York.
Both in New York. And I see them all over social media doing stuff. the guy we had, he's a comedian. I think
Yeah,
he does a
he's
bunch.
great.
He's hilarious.
Yeah.
I've seen a bunch of mock-up like ads and things that he
Yeah.
does, and they're just so funny.
Yeah, he's good.
But on that music video, it was about these two young lovers that were separating and going their separate ways to college, and good old-fashioned country music.
Good old country
Good
music.
old country music.
Classic stuff.
So they were going their separate ways, and there were some scenes that needed a rigged mount for the camera to shoot into the truck that they were driving for the music video. And a little bit bigger truck, not like nothing. It wasn't like a diesel or anything.
It was an F-150.
Yeah, it was like,
good truck.
So we always ask, safety, make sure that everyone's good. Want to make sure that, the actors are choosing to do what they need to do in the scene and make sure that they're good. And the rig mount was a scary thing for us because
we bought it on Amazon.
Yeah,
I think it was like $50 maybe. And I think a lot of like the professional, legit rigging for that kind of stuff can be quite a bit more.
Yeah.
So ours was capable, but definitely not the most capable.
We had it rigged up how it needed to be rigged up for safety. We had everything on it. We asked the guy, we said, hey, do you feel comfortable? Are you good driving this truck? He's like, oh yeah. Like I've drove big trucks my whole life. I'm like, all right, here we go. So I'm trying to think of that first scene because I can't remember if we had a follow car with video feed kind of.
I think you and I were actually riding in the backseat, just kind of ducking out of the camera.
That's right, we were.
Yeah, and the thing that I remember was the funniest is when we had rigged up the camera, I've got like, this is my new baby. I have this Komodo that I just got. I'm super excited about. And it's, I spent a lot of money on the camera, and we'd had it rigged up on the outside of the car. It was our first time using this rig. And, we had done it safely. We followed the precautions and made sure it was good. But there's still that level of like, man, my car's just, my camera's just hanging on the outside of a car. And when we first gave the direction, I was like, just drive slow and like, be aware that there's a camera there and play into it, for certain parts of the song that make sense. And the first thing he does in the parking lot is he just like pulls the wheel and just rips out of there. And I was like, oh my God, I'm sitting in this car thinking like, dude, this could ruin one of the biggest assets that I own for both my career and just like financially, just like, so that was a funny moment because he came in with so much confidence. And again, he's a great guy,
Like,
and I was like,
are you sure you're good?
I was like, dude, like slow down, please.
Hey, that's a lot of money hanging out the window.
Great shot, great shot, but
all right, we got the shot.
I would like to get more shots. Yeah. So that was a good one.
Yeah, that was a blast, and that was a lot of fun for me because we shot at my hometown, outside of St. Louis in Illinois, small little town, and honestly filming a lot of places that I grew up in, and it was just very nostalgic for me. And it was fun, man. It was a really good time.
So a question that we get a lot from our peers and our friends is like, how do you get in contact with these artists? Like, how do you end up finding yourselves on sets with Big Wild and Colter Wall and all this stuff? And I want to share one of those stories because I think it's a really cool window into how that world actually works sometimes. So if you guys don't know this, I've been a big fan of Colter Wall for a long time. He's someone that I found.
Got the hat on?
I've got the hat on. This is the Colter Wall hat right here.
And who is Colter Wall?
Colter Wall is a young country artist who's new on the scene and is very known for his voice, and he's known for his classic style and approach to country music.
A lot of people say very modern, like similar Johnny Cash vibes.
Oh yeah, he's like today's Johnny Cash for sure. And the cool thing about him is like the first time I heard Colter Wall, and in music as you often do, is like I just heard the song. So I really thought, and this is a lot of people share this experience, I really thought the first time that I had heard him that this was just some old relic country song that someone has resurfaced somehow. And I was like, man, this is like so good. This is like such a classic old song. And then when I started doing some research on him, I found out that at the time he's 27 years old. And it's the craziest thing to see because when you see him live, it's like you see this young man who's 27, 20, I think he's 28 now.
I didn't know that. I thought he was an older man.
Oh, yeah. He sounds, if you don't see him, you automatically assume he's an older man because his voice is so mature.
By just his demeanor and like his ginormous mustache that he had on stage last weekend, I thought it was an older guy.
And he's like a real rancher, man. He bought a ranch and he works on his ranch. And it's really cool because when you shoot with him, you kind of get that experience of like, oh, this guy's like, he's not just singing country music. This is a Western
Lifestyle.
This is a Western
Yeah.
dude. And there's a couple funny stories, but to jump back into how that project came to be, I did a ton of research on Colter, and I was really interested in finding his manager, because that's typically who we try to contact when we're working out these projects. And I found this guy on Instagram. Royal Sutton is his Instagram, and he's an awesome country manager who has a really cool story. I won't jump into that now, but he kind of got into that space through Colter. And I reached out to him. I sent a couple emails, and just a standard pitch, but definitely more tailored to him, because we really wanted this project. And I didn't hear anything back, and that happens all the time. If anyone's in sales, or if you're in the creative space and you're doing sales, like like a 2% retention rate, you gotta like reach out to as many people as you can. And this one was it was tough for me, because I was really wanting to do this shoot, and so I didn't hear back from him for a long time. And I'd kind of tossed in the hat on the project. I sent him a few follow-up emails, and but didn't hear anything back, and that was that. So we're gonna move on. And then I randomly, during Christmas time, I just get a text, or I get an email saying, "Text me." And it's Colter Wall's manager. And I was like, oh, no way. So I text him, and he's like, hey, let's set up a call. And I jumped at the opportunity. I think I was at this mozzarella making class with my family. Nice. And I was like, hey, I have to walk outside for like 30 minutes, because this is just something I got to do. And everyone was very understanding. But so I walked outside, and I talked to his manager, and he's like the nicest dude. He's like, yeah, man, let's do it. Like, this sounds great. And that was just such an exciting experience, because at this point in our career, we do have a pretty strong portfolio. Like, we've worked with some big artists. We've done some great productions, Griz, Rainbow Brains being one of those, and a bunch of other stuff at Red Rocks and Mission Ballroom. So, I do believe that helped a lot. But it was really cool and validating to kind of see how willing he was to work with us for such a big artist. And that was a real big moment for me, and of course, eventually for our team.
It was a fun show, and
great show.
That venue alone, like, we've been working in for the last pretty much since the beginning of our company.
Yeah.
I mean, venues all over Colorado, from Red Rocks to Mission Ballroom, which is my favorite indoor. I don't want to say my favorite venue because I love all the venues here, but that venue alone and the sound is just incredible. Getting to work there and film there is such an awesome experience, because the energy that piles into that place, being that we've filmed EDM to now like these country artists and just all sorts of artists. It's cool to see what each demographic brings in with all the music that comes in there. It's just a phenomenal venue, and it was so rad to work with Colter and his team.
Yeah,
because they are just
chill.
Just who they are. Like,
they're chill.
I love, like, there was like no egos. No. It was just very like, I'm a Western guy. This is the music I play. He literally was on stage. He was like, these are my buddies. We're gonna play some music. And I was like, all right, here we go.
That was awesome.
But that show was awesome. We had a really good crew on that one, and I can't wait for that one to come out.
Yeah,
really nice.
I actually have a very funny story about the end of that show. So, me being a big Colter Wall fan, I was trying to organically meet him, whenever the opportunity presented itself. And I had a few run-ins with him. He was walking outside at one point, and he was checking out our cameras at one point. We had some small banter. And this is when I realized, oh, he's like a Western guy, right? I would talk to him, and he'd be like, looks good, man. All right. And I was like, cool. It made me so happy, because it's exactly who
he said something to me.
Yeah, it was exactly who I thought he was, and then it was who he was, and I was like, oh, this is so cool. I grew up in Connecticut, so it's such a different experience for me, but I am very interested in it. But there's this one great moment. There was, at one point, I was outside, and I ran into one of his band members, and we started chatting a bit, and he's like, oh man, I'm so stoked. This is the first time one of these projects have gotten filmed while I've been in the band, so I'm really excited to see it. And I was like, oh, great. And he was like, why don't you come upstairs and have some whiskey with us? And I was like, dude, I will. Like, we have a ton of gear to pack, but if you guys are still here, I'll be up there. I want to have some whiskey with you. How can you turn that down? And so my window comes, right? We'd wrapped everything up. We packed everything up. Everyone's in the car. And I tell the guys I'm driving back, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna just like run in there for a second and just say thank you, and then I'll be back. And so I walk upstairs. And I don't know if you guys have had this experience. Some of you may have, some of you might not know. But walking into a green room at a venue with an artist that you're very interested in can be really intimidating. You got everybody who's there. They're either in the band or they're close friends, and like there's this circle, and it's a nerve-wracking experience to just like walk into that green room, right? But I was building myself up. I was like, oh, I got this. I'm gonna go in there. I'm going to introduce myself and just say thank you for letting us come out and shoot this project. And so I finally get up the courage, and I walk into the door, And it's one of those moments. And again, they're all super kind people, but my brain is in such a fight or flight state. So I was just kind of taking it in as it was. I walk into that room and every single head just goes boom right to me. And keep in mind, I've only ever been talking to his manager at this point, and I think like they maybe saw me working.
Like, you're in the wrong room.
Like no one knew who I was. And so I walk in there and like I'm like, oh damn, like this, I'm very uncomfortable. I'm very nervous. And I was like, I just want to say thank you guys for having me out. Like I had a really great time, and appreciate you having me out. And at that point, I'm pretty sure a few of them had actually said something to me, maybe asked me a question or something, but my brain was like, get out of here. This is
get out. You're like,
this is for them.
Get out of the room now.
Get the hell out.
They don't want me.
So a few people said some stuff and I was like, all right. And I walked back in the car and I was like, man, I should have just let it be, dude.
Yeah. Wow. I didn't know that happened.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
And I think it was just a mix of me, like, you're so excited to work with artists that when you work with an artist that you're really a big fan of, it's like, it's this weird experience. You get like, sometimes you'll get a little bit of like a shell shock kind of thing. And then sometimes it'll feel really cool because you actually find out like, oh, they're just a real human. And I think I just had a lot of stuff running through me, and
you're like starstruck.
I came back to the car. I was like, dude, I just made a complete fool of myself, but I'm hoping that that's how I'm remembered. Cause then I'm remembered. Right. Cause like, if you're mean, you never want to be seen as mean or aggressive, but if you're maybe a little nervous or kind of an idiot, that's not bad. Right?
We're just going to have an email in the inbox that's like, hey, thanks to have you. Yeah, I'm glad you guys came out, but I'm not sure really what happened with Austin. He came in the green room, caused a bunch of ruckus, and they ran out. And like,
Oh, man. I have no idea what they said. If I didn't answer a question, DM me, dude.
Kind of left real weird. I didn't know what was going on.
My brain was like, get out.
Well, cool. This has been super awesome.
Yeah.
Obviously, we work together. This has been great to like sit down and like one-on-one talk and, dive into just the stories behind the scenes and like, where did this come from? Why are we here? What are we trying to achieve? And just to kind of leave on the note is, it's 2024. We are planning on doing, some great things this year. We have a lot of spec pieces. We have a lot of, clients lined up to do things, and just a really exciting year as every year is just such a stepping stone of growth that we had no idea.
Yeah.
Like anyone that's growing a business, like you didn't know you were going to learn, but it's a beautiful, stressful adventure that I wouldn't trade for anything. No. Like it's I'm so glad I fell into this world, and the production life and like how it's being treated. I love flowing with everything that's happening in the world, because in filmmaking and content and things, like there's always like this battle, but like my brain is so excited to create, whether it's just doing whatever, like if I'm bored in the office, like I just love creating, and I love that I get to create with such a beautiful team. And
there's a crazy satisfaction that comes with just making something. And I think another thing that's really cool and that we often forget, because we're so in the weeds. Like we've been growing this company for, almost 4 years now. And like, it's a roller coaster, man. There's super high highs and there's super low lows, and there's a baseline of stress that's running right through the whole thing. So when you're involved in that way and you're so like committed and interested in what it is that you're doing, it's really easy to forget where you've gotten. And I think it's really cool. Like when I look back now and having this conversation, kind of breaking out of the office and just talking to you, it's like, man, we really have made a lot of progress. Now we've got miles to go and we will get there, but it's really cool to sit back and see what we've already accomplished in such a short time. And I'm so excited to see where we head this year, because this is going to be a big year.
Oh yeah. And it just the testament of time, and also being in a room with 4 guys that all share similar creative mindsets and making it work between 4 people that are obviously going to come to the door with different ideas. Yeah. That is how I know I like love and want to put work into like a team like that, because to me that is like so rare. I have a lot of friends that have ran smaller production houses, and they just have hard time lining up the people that they're with, and just to find your people, it's a very small speck in this world.
Special.
And I absolutely love our team. I'm so excited about everything. I can't wait to put out all the projects we've been working on, because there are a lot sitting from 2023 that are going to come out in 2024, and sometimes projects don't come out forever, not at all. But yeah, it's going to be a really, really great year, and I'm glad we get to sit down, like I said before, and Yeah, man. You wanna exit us out of
Sure.
here?
Thank you guys for watching. That was episode 1 of The Spread by Butter Creations. We plan on doing this bi-weekly, putting them out as often as we can, making sure we serve our clients first, of course. And I hope you guys enjoyed. And yeah, like, share, comment, subscribe, whatever you're supposed to say with stuff like this. And enjoy.
Very good. Very good.